Cinnamon rolls. That may be the whole sermon. Just those two words. But these are not just any cinnamon rolls. These are my grandmother's cinnamon rolls. The ones made from scratch and by hand and with love. Grandmama starts with the dough. It's the same dough she uses to make her famous dinner rolls, so the foundation is already there before the sweetness is even added. She makes the dough, allows it to rise, and then rolls it out on the countertop. And then on top of that rolled out dough, she adds the sugary magic, a mixture of brown sugar, cinnamon, butter, and other delicious things. The secret is the figs. She used to pick them from a tree in her yard before she moved, following my grandfather's death. My grandparents would harvest the figs, and my grandmother would can them. I remember the lined up jars in the pantry, ready to be added to that year's pans of cinnamon rolls. Grandmama buys the figs at the store now, but they are still the secret ingredient, cut and put on top of all of that sugary, buttery goodness. Once the filling is assembled, the rolling begins, because what are cinnamon rolls without the rolling? And Grandmama rolls the dough with meticulous care, making sure that none of that filling escapes onto the countertop. Every bit of it is still going to be right there in the middle. So into the pan, and then one more layer of melted butter painted on top. The rolls get one more chance to rise, and then into the oven. And there's something about smelling those baking cinnamon rolls before you can taste them that somehow makes them even better. As the rolls bake, Grandmama gets all of the ingredients needed for the icing, confectioner's sugar this time, and the icing is ready to go before the timer goes off. Hot rolls come out of the oven, icing goes on top, and then those cinnamon rolls are not long for this world. Whether right out of the oven or brought to a family gathering, you don't wait to partake of Grandmama's cinnamon rolls. If they're offered as an appetizer, you say, yes, please. And then a word about the cinnamon roll pan, because the pan is an ingredient to the cinnamon rolls in its own right. There is no other dish needed. Grandmama bakes and prepares and serves the cinnamon rolls in the same pan every time. It's a pan that has a top that fits on it just right, so it can go from the oven to the table to the car to the fridge. This pan is an Episcopalian's dream. It is saturated in tradition. It is hallowed ground. It is an outward and visible sign of the inward and spiritual goodness that it contains. Grandmama has 6 grandchildren, and all of us are adept at locating the pan. We can spot it. If we're visiting her house, we see it there on the countertop. Lid is off. Those cinnamon rolls have just come out of the oven. Grandmama pulls into the driveway at the holidays. We're standing there. We spot her purse, maybe one other bag. Oh, good. There's the pan. Arriving at a family gathering after everybody else has arrived, seeing the pan on top of the fridge, wherever it is that we're gathered, and making a mental note so that you can grab the pan and hide it from your other siblings and cousins. Oh, the family that has been formed by that pan. The sustenance, the nourishment that has been given with dough and sugar and butter and figs. The family that has been fed by its matriarch who knows the recipe for goodness by heart and who shows up with the pan in times of celebration and in times of crisis. It was Grandmama's cinnamon rolls that I thought about when this Advent I read the following line in one of my devotionals. Hope is the simple trust that God has not forgotten the recipe for manna. Hope is the simple trust that God has not forgotten the recipe for manna. That is the work of Advent. Naming and reclaiming the hope we have in the one who forms us and nourishes us. Our hope in the one who knows every ingredient, every step, and just the right pan to show up and to bring us nourishment in the wilderness. Our hope in the one who will sustain us in the long wait between the joy that is already here and present and the joy that is still to come. And it is a long wait. Advent hope is rugged and real. It names what is hard. It names the rough places. It names the truth. We see that today in our readings, both in Matthew's gospel and from the prophet Isaiah. King Ahaz is facing some stark realities. Neighboring kingdoms are besieging Jerusalem, and the king is panicked. He doesn't know how he's going to protect Jerusalem or protect her people. And he's having a hard time trusting that God remembers the recipe for manna. The realities seem too hard, too real, too rough, maybe even beyond Yahweh's promise of salvation. What is God's promise in the face of suffering and uncertainty like this? Ahaz does not want to see one more sign of hope from God. It's okay. I know not to put God to the test. No sign is needed. And Isaiah basically says, tough, Ahaz. God's persistence at offering signs of hope will outmatch your stubbornness any day. And so in the midst of the hard and the real and the rough, in the midst of a besieged city and kingdom, God offers a sign of wholeness and restoration. Look, the young woman is with child and shall bear a son and shall name him Emmanuel. I remember the recipe, God says, to Ahaz and to Jerusalem, the recipe for creation and new life. In the name Emmanuel, God tells the people, I am with you. The work of restoring and remaking the world is not work I do from a distance. It is work I do up close. It is a recipe I invite you to learn from me. My promise is a hope strong and rugged enough to meet the real suffering and uncertainty of the world. Look, Ahaz. Look, Jerusalem. And then Matthew repeats the sign in the story of the angel sent to visit Joseph in a dream. Joseph is facing his own stark realities. He is engaged to Mary, a young woman who is already with child. The society and culture of the time would expect Joseph, at the very least, to end the betrothal, and at most, to call for Mary's death. Joseph has decided for the least dramatic of these options until God's persistence at showing signs of hope shows up in his dreams. The Holy Spirit has come upon Mary and is working in Joseph too. Do not be afraid, Joseph, the angel says. Do not be afraid to do the unexpected thing. Do not be afraid to surprise the status quo. It's part of the recipe. Look, Joseph, do not be afraid to support Mary. She has said yes to bearing God into the world, and you can now say yes to her. Mary will bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. In this baby, the world will know that God is with us and that God saves. In this baby, the world will remember that God knows the recipe for manna. The bread of life, Jesus will call himself, born into the world. Look, the young woman is with child and shall bear a son and shall name him Emmanuel. Like Ahaz and like Joseph, the truth of the world and of our lives remains hard and real and rough. God's persistence remains as well. God's invitation to rugged hope. Hope that says God is with us. Not hope that says that life will never be hard or real or rough, that there will never be injustice or suffering or uncertainty or a long, long wait until joy is fully realized. Rugged hope that says God is with us. That when we are hungry in the wilderness, God shows up with the pan to feed us. That when we are besieged by enemies on all sides, that when we are afraid, God will be born into our midst. That God is with us and God saves us. Hope is the simple trust that God has not forgotten the recipe for manna. O come, Emmanuel.